At midnight, Elon Musk received a call from a voice he couldn't trace, claiming to have something he never knew he lost. Torn between logic and a gut feeling, he followed a cryptic lead to a rundown building in Oakland. What he discovered inside would unravel a 25-year-old secret that could destroy or redefine his legacy forever. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The mansion was silent, save for the rhythmic hum of machines and the occasional crackle from the fireplace in the corner. Outside, Los Angeles slept beneath a sheet of stars. Inside, Elon Musk sat hunched over a wide desk in his private study, eyes locked on the glowing screens in front of him. Multiple monitors displayed code, schematics, and simulations for a SpaceX propulsion system that had been keeping him awake for weeks. The mug beside him, emblazoned with the words "Sleep is for the weak," had long gone cold, forgotten in the chaos of ideas battling for dominance in his mind. He rubbed his eyes with one hand, stylus still tapping against the digital sketchpad with the other. Most would have called it a night hours ago, but for Elon, this was his sacred time, when the world went quiet and his mind could roam unshackled. Then it happened. The phone rang. Not his usual phone, which constantly buzzed with alerts from assistants, executives, and notifications from Tesla's autopilot test server. No, this was that phone, a slim, jet-black device that never rang unless it was family or one of a handful of trusted advisors. Its ringtone was different too, one that jolted him upright immediately. He stared at the screen. No name, no number, just impossible. His custom-built security system identified all incoming calls, even cloaked ones. This line was encrypted end to end, shielded behind layers of digital armor designed by SpaceX and Tesla's top engineers. Even government agencies wouldn't be able to get through without leaving a trace. Elon's fingers hovered above the device. Logic said ignore it, alert security, go back to the code. But something about this moment felt different. It rang again and again. On the seventh ring, he answered, "Hello." There was a pause. Then, the faintest sound, like someone breathing through a mask. Then a whisper, distorted, genderless, eerily calm. "Mr. Musk, I have something that belongs to you, something you didn't know was missing." Elon's heart gave a sharp jolt. He sat up straighter. "Who is this?" Silence. "You don't recognize my voice. That's okay. Check your email, your private account." Click. The line went dead. For a moment, the room was still. Elon glanced toward the nearest camera in the corner of the room, then back to his screen. He opened his private encrypted email account, one only known to close family and a couple of longtime confidants. One new message. No subject line. The sender? A string of random letters and numbers that even his AI-driven filters couldn't decode. Elon's pulse quickened. He ran a security scan on the message. Nothing malicious. Cautiously, he opened it. Inside was a single image. A photograph of a worn leather journal, its edges frayed, the deep burgundy cover cracked with age. His name, Elon Musk, was embossed in gold across the front. Beneath the image, an address in Oakland. Oakland? He squinted. The neighborhood was unfamiliar. It wasn't one of his known facilities, labs, or warehouses. Then, a second alert. A new message, this time a text on the private phone. "Come alone, you have 1 hour, this isn't about money." His first instinct was to call Dominic, his head of security. This had the hallmarks of a setup, a trap, maybe even a kidnapping attempt, but his gut told a different story. Whoever this was had access to systems they shouldn't, knowledge of a device that few even knew existed. And now, a journal, with his name on it that he'd never seen before? This wasn't a threat. It was a message. He opened the desk drawer and retrieved a secure, untraceable phone. Dialed. Dominic answered instantly. "Sir? I need a car ready in 15 minutes. Discreet, something untraceable." Where are you going? Oakland. A pause. I'll accompany you with backup. No, Elon said firmly. Alone. Just the car. Sir, that violates every protocol. I know, Elon interrupted, already pulling on a black jacket over a plain shirt. But this isn't business as usual. Dominic hesitated. Then, 20 minutes, a gray Tesla, no trackers. Good. Another buzz. One final message. Come alone, or don't come at all. Elon slipped into his older clothes. Worn sneakers, jeans, a hoodie that hadn't seen daylight in years. Disguise in plain sight. As he walked down the empty corridor of his mansion, he didn't look back. He didn't know what he'd find in Oakland. But something inside him whispered, this was going to change everything. The drive to Oakland was strangely quiet. The gray Tesla hummed along the empty freeway, headlights cutting through patches of fog that curled like ghostly fingers across the asphalt. Elon Musk sat behind the wheel, his mind racing faster than the car. He had built his life on precision, predictability, and calculated risk. But tonight he was chasing a mystery, and that was unlike him. The journal, the voice on the phone, the eerie insistence to come alone. Every logical voice in his head screamed, turn around. But deeper, beneath the logic and protocol, was a pulse of intuition. Something important was waiting for him. The neighborhoods changed as he entered East Oakland. Gone were the manicured lawns and polished storefronts. Here the streets bore signs of wear. Grime-streaked windows, aging brick buildings, corner markets with flickering neon signs. A place untouched by Silicon Valley's gleaming promises. Yet nestled between a shuttered laundromat and a discount liquor store, his GPS declared, "You've arrived." He eased the Tesla to the curb and killed the engine. Across the street stood a two-story building with peeling paint and faded murals on the walls. Brightly colored handprints, children's faces, slogans painted by tiny hands that read things like, "Every mind matters," and "Learning looks different here." A wooden sign hung above the door, weathered but proud. Orzon House, where new beginnings start. It didn't look like a tech lab or a trap. It looked like a school, sort of. A single light glowed from the window near the entrance, casting a warm glow onto the sidewalk. Elon scanned the street. No movement. No suspicious cars. No cameras, no drones. Just the smell of old pavement and a night breeze carrying the faint scent of paint and something sweet, like vanilla. Then, a flicker of movement, a handwritten note taped to the front door. Elon crossed the street cautiously, hands in his jacket pockets, alert but calm. The paper read, "Mr. Musk, please come in." He tried the handle. It wasn't locked. The door swung open with a soft chime, and he stepped into a space that stopped him cold. This wasn't an office, this wasn't a trap, it was a sanctuary? Bright artwork lined the walls, paintings, drawings, projects clearly made by children. The room was filled with tiny tables, some stacked with puzzles and books, others covered in art supplies and science kits. Everything was mismatched but neat, clean, cared for. A scent of lavender and old books lingered in the air, mingled with the unmistakable smell of tempera paint and hand sanitizer. It reminded Elon of libraries from his childhood. Safe, curious. Then came the voice. "Back here," a woman called, calm and clear. Elon followed the voice down a short hallway lined with framed photographs. Dozens of children's faces beamed out at him, laughing, painting, reading, building. Kids from every background imaginable. Some wore glasses, some had wheelchairs. Others simply smiled with the unfiltered joy only a child can manage. At the end of the hall, a door stood half open. Light spilled out. Inside sat an elderly woman behind a modest wooden desk, hands folded, back straight. Her silver hair was pulled into a tidy bun. Her eyes, sharp and steady, met his without a trace of surprise. "We've been waiting for you a long time, Mr. Musk," she said gently. "Please." Elon hesitated for a moment, then took the seat across from her. My name is Magdalena Flores. I'm the director of Horizon House. He studied the room. Like the rest of the building, it was simple but organized. Bookshelves lined the walls. A corkboard displayed letters, flyers, drawings, and notes. A child's finger-painted masterpiece hung crookedly behind her, proudly signed in glitter glue, Love, Zion. "You're the one who called me?" Elon asked. She shook her head. "No, but I approved the contact. We agreed it was time." Elon frowned. "Time for what?" Before she could answer, she lifted a chipped blue mug from her desk and offered it to him. It had a painted handprint on the side and the name Jordan scribbled beneath it. "Chamomile tea," she said with a smile. "It helps with difficult conversations." Elon accepted the mug, still warm. "What is this place?" he asked, more quietly now. "A haven," Magdalena replied. "For children who don't fit into the world's boxes. Not a traditional school, more of a sanctuary. Some come because of learning differences, others because they've been failed by the system. But here, we don't treat them like problems, we see them as possibilities." Something in her voice, steadfast and soft, hit Elon harder than he expected. He glanced around the room again, now seeing it through a different lens. Not just crayons and colored books, not just worn carpet and second-hand chairs. This was a lifeline, and he had no idea what any of it had to do with him. "I still don't understand what this has to do with me," he said carefully. Magdalena's expression didn't waver. "That," she said softly, "is something Olivia will explain." Before Elon could respond, a door at the back of the room creaked open. A young woman stepped in, carrying a worn shoebox in her trembling hands. "Mr. Musk," Magdalena said, her voice now thick with meaning. "This is Olivia Barrett. Her mother once worked for you, and what she's about to show you may change everything." Olivia Barrett's hands trembled slightly as she clutched the old shoebox against her chest. Her eyes, intelligent and reserved behind wire-rimmed glasses, met Elon Musk's with a blend of courage and nervous anticipation. She looked to be in her late 20s, but there was a weight in her expression that made her seem older, like someone who had carried secrets for too long. She took a slow breath and nodded politely. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Musk," she said softly. "My mother waited a long time for this moment." Elon's brows furrowed. "Your mother?" "Clara Barrett," Olivia replied. He searched his memory. The name meant nothing. Not a former executive, not an engineer. He shook his head. "I'm sorry. I don't recognize it." "I didn't expect you to," Olivia said, stepping forward and gently placing the shoebox on the table between them. "But she knew you very well, and she wanted you to see this personally." Olivia slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a worn burgundy leather journal. Its edges were frayed, the corners bent, the gold embossing on the front barely legible. But one thing stood out immediately: his name. Elon Musk, pressed into the cover like a quiet revelation. Elon blinked. "What is this?" Olivia looked at the journal as though it were sacred. It was my mother's, a private journal she kept for over 2 decades. She started writing it the day she began working as a janitor at your first company. Night shift. 1998. The words hit Elon like a jolt. "Janitor?" He sat back slightly. "She worked for me at Zip2?" Olivia nodded. "She cleaned your office every night while you were still building your first company. You probably never even noticed her. But she noticed you." Elon reached for the journal, pausing just before his fingers touched the leather. He could feel the weight of something intangible. Memory, legacy, the past reaching forward. "She observed everything," Olivia continued, her voice gaining steadiness. "The way you talked to yourself when you worked late into the night, the problems you were trying to solve, the nights you left exhausted, the whiteboards full of equations. She was never just cleaning. She was watching, listening." Magdalena spoke then, her voice calm and unwavering. "Clara was an extraordinary mind in extraordinary circumstances. She had a background in computer science, but dropped out of college when she became pregnant with Olivia. Life didn't give her a straight path, but she never stopped learning. Olivia carefully lifted the journal and passed it to Elon, her hands lingering on the cover a moment longer before letting go. She used this to document what she heard, what she saw, and sometimes to help. Elon opened the journal. The pages were filled with neat, compact handwriting. The first entry was dated September 12, 1998. First day at the new job. Night shift cleaning crew. The boss stayed until 3 a.m. working on server issues. He talks to himself when he thinks no one is listening. Reminds me of how I used to debug code in my head. I miss that life. But this will do. Olivia starts school tomorrow. He turned the page, heart beating faster. Each entry unfolded like a time capsule of his early startup days. Discussions he barely remembered, challenges that once kept him up at night. Except now they were being retold by someone he never saw. Then he froze. September 24, 1998. They're still stuck on the database problem. Took a risk tonight and left a note on the boss's desk when I emptied his trash. Try checking the connection string parameters. Cleaning staff. Hope I don't get fired. Elon's head snapped up. Wait, that was her? His voice was tinged with disbelief. The database fix? We spent a week spinning our wheels. That note saved us. Olivia smiled faintly. She never told anyone. Said the victory was yours. But she was proud. Really proud. Elon stared at the journal again, flipping through entries that revealed more than technical notes. They showed a woman wrestling with motherhood, loneliness, and the quiet hope that her daughter's life would be better. And through it all, her fascination with what he was building, her belief in him, shone like a quiet flame. She started investing in your company, Olivia said, placing a small bundle of documents on the table. Every dollar she could spare, small amounts at first, but over time, they grew. Elon unfolded the papers. Early stock certificates dated from the late 90s. Real, significant. My mother believed in you before the world did, Olivia said, emotion tightening her voice. And she used the return on that belief to build something she believed in just as deeply. This place. Elon sat motionless, the journal open on his lap, the weight of it, both literal and symbolic, pressing into his hands. For the first time in a long time, he was speechless. She didn't want anything from you, Olivia whispered. But now that she's gone, she wanted you to know what grew from those nights. And from her belief in your vision. Elon looked up slowly. She changed more lives than I ever knew. Sheen changed mine, Olivia said, and now, maybe she can change yours too. The room was silent but charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks open. Elon sat on the edge of the worn reading room chair, Clara Barrett's journal now resting gently on his lap, while Olivia opened the next layer of the mystery. From the same shoebox, she pulled out a bundle of weathered envelopes, bound by a delicate, fading blue ribbon. They looked like they had been opened and reread hundreds of times. Some were yellowing at the edges, the ink on a few barely visible in the low light. Ease, Olivia said softly, her voice carrying something between reverence and sorrow. Are the letters my mother wrote to you but never mailed? Elon blinked. She wrote to me? Not to the public figure, Olivia clarified. Not to the billionaire or the inventor. She wrote to the man she watched struggle in silence. The man who worked alone at 3 a.m, solving impossible problems. She said she felt like you were more yourself then than any headline ever captured. She untied the ribbon slowly, unfolding the first letter. The pages crackled gently and Elon instinctively leaned forward as if listening to a secret. January 15, 2000. To the boss. You don't know me, but I clean your office every night. I'm writing to explain something I've done that affects us both. 3 months ago, I invested my entire savings, $2,876, in company stock. That may not seem like much to you, but it was everything I'd saved over 2 years of night shifts. I made this choice not for me, but for my daughter. Olivia, she's 8 years old. Smart, struggling, like I once was. I see how hard you work, and I believe you're building something that could change the world. This is my way of giving my daughter a better future, even if I remain invisible in the process." Elon closed his eyes. The paper trembled slightly in his hands. There was no self-pity in Clara's words, only fierce, grounded hope. "Why didn't she send these?" he asked, his voice low. "She didn't want to burden you," Olivia replied. "She said these letters were her way of talking to you, even if you never read them. A kind of quiet connection. But in the end, she wanted you to see them all." Elon read another, dated 3 years later, the ink darker and more confident. May 3, 2003. "The investment has grown. The company's success has changed everything. I'm still cleaning offices. Old habits are hard to break. But I've started using the returns to build something close to my heart. Along with Olivia's former teacher, I'm creating a learning space for children who don't fit into neat little boxes. We call it Horizon House. It began in a living room, 6 children. It's growing. You'll never know the role you played in this. That's okay. Some of the most important contributions we make happen in silence." The words sliced through Elon like a blade sharpened by humility. He had built rockets, reshaped transportation, sent satellites into orbit, but here, in these quiet pages, was a legacy he had unknowingly helped sow. He read more. The letters painted a fuller picture of Clara, her tenacity, her determination to see Olivia thrive, and her growing commitment to building something that would last beyond her own life. Each letter was both a snapshot and a thread in a longer, hidden story. In one note dated 2010, Clara wrote, "Olivia wants to become a teacher. She says she wants to help children like herself. I've created a trust with the rest of the investment. She'll go to college. Horizon House now serves 37 children. They come broken by a system that doesn't see them, and they leave whole. We're doing something right." "I wish you could see it." Elon looked up, his eyes glassy. "I am seeing it." "I think that's all she ever wanted," Olivia said. "Not money, not fame, just for you to see what came of it all." Magdalena entered the room quietly with a tray, simple mugs of chamomile tea, and a plate of cookies that looked handmade. "You might need something warm," she said gently. Elon accepted the tea, but barely tasted it. His mind was still spinning from the emotional weight of Clara's words. Did she really never want credit for any of this? "She believed her reward was seeing children thrive," Magdalena replied. "She said success didn't need a name attached to it to matter." Elon stared at the bundle of letters, still more to read. "But now, with Horizon House at risk, you're showing me this because she didn't want this place to die in silence," Olivia said firmly, "and because the one person who unknowingly helped create it might be the only one who can save it." There it was, the pivot, the subtle shift from memory to responsibility, from legacy to decision. And Elon Musk, a man who had spent his life solving problems no one else dared touch, now sat at the center of the most human puzzle he'd ever encountered. A puzzle made of paper and ink, of love and sacrifice, and of a woman who dared to dream from the shadows. He picked up the next letter. There was still more of the story to understand. The tea had long gone cold, but Elon hadn't noticed. He sat in near silence, surrounded by Clara Barrett's legacy, her journal, her letters, and the profound sense that something monumental had unfolded in the shadows of his life without him ever realizing it. Olivia and Magdalena watched him quietly, giving him space, until the moment came when the weight of the letters settled and his voice returned. "Clara built something more meaningful than some people do with billions," he said finally. "She didn't just invest in my company, she invested in humanity." Magdalena nodded, but the look in her eyes was more solemn than celebratory. And now that humanity is under threat. It was Olivia who spoke next, carefully, as if walking a tightrope. There's something else you need to know, something Mom only told us in her final weeks, something she never wrote down. Elon turned to her, eyebrows slightly raised. She continued, "The developer trying to buy this building. He's not just another faceless real estate company. He has a name, Raymond Donovan." The room chilled in an instant. Elon's spine straightened. His voice dropped. "Raymond?" Olivia nodded. "You know him?" Elon exhaled, slowly. "Raymond Donovan and I were co-founders once, back in the early days. He was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly fixated on power. We built something groundbreaking together, but when our visions diverged, things got ugly. I walked away from the partnership. He didn't. He made it personal." Magdalena leaned forward, her voice low but firm. "Clara overheard your final confrontation with him. She never told anyone, until recently. But she heard him say, word for word, that he would spend the rest of his career dismantling everything you built, piece by piece." The words struck like a hammer blow. Elon's jaw tensed. A part of him had always assumed Raymond's threats were empty, angry words from a man scorned. But to hear that Clara, someone he hadn't even known was in the room, had witnessed it, confirmed the venom behind the promise. "I thought he disappeared into finance," Elon murmured. "Hell did," Olivia replied, "and then he founded Venture Start. He's been acquiring community buildings across Oakland, 12 in the past 5 years alone, all nonprofit spaces, all repurposed into luxury developments. And now Horizon House," Magdalena added, her voice tight. "But why this place?" Elon asked, frustration rising. Raymond's spite couldn't possibly run this deep, not after all these years. Olivia opened her phone and pulled up a saved screenshot. She passed it across the table. Elon studied it. An internal email from Venture Start Acquisitions to Legal and Development Team. Subject: Barrett Property Priority Target. Message: Donovan says proceed regardless of price, secure title, fast-track timeline. Barrett Property, Elon repeated. He knew Clara's name. "She bought this building through a non-profit foundation," Olivia explained. "The Clara Barrett Foundation for Educational Innovation. Public records. If Donovan's team combed through your early investor list, they would have found her name, her address, everything," Magdalena added. "And if Raymond Donovan is as vindictive as Clara believed, this building isn't just another real estate acquisition to him. It's a symbolic strike." Silence followed, thick and heavy. Elon stood and paced the small room, mind racing. He's still playing a game I walked away from decades ago, but now he's targeting something sacred. Magdalena's voice softened. "Clara didn't just protect Horizon House all these years. She shielded it from people like him. But now, she's gone." Olivia reached for a folder on the table and handed it to Elon. Inside were records, building permits, zoning changes, foundation paperwork, all meticulously kept. Clara had documented everything, including her fears. "She knew this day might come," Olivia said. "That's why she made me promise to find you, because you're the only one with the power and the will to stop him." Elon looked from the folder to the photograph of Clara that rested on a nearby shelf. She stood in front of Horizon House, arms around a group of children, smiling with a quiet pride. A woman who once mopped floors and solved back-end architecture problems in secret. A woman who built a sanctuary while the world overlooked her. "I won't let him erase this," Elon said, his voice like steel. "Not Clara, not these children, not the legacy she built while the world wasn't watching. There was still a war to fight, but now he knew who the enemy truly was. And Elon Musk, once a silent recipient of late-night cleaning staff notes, was about to step out of the shadows. This time, not just as a tech titan, but as a guardian of the invisible. The weight of Clara Barrett's legacy lingered heavily in the air, But there was still one thread left dangling, one final piece of her story that had not yet been shared. Olivia's expression grew more serious, and Magdalena's gaze turned inward, as if preparing themselves to unveil something long protected. Elon noticed the shift in energy. He leaned forward slightly. "There's something else," Olivia said quietly, almost reverently. "Something Mom never documented. Not in the journal, not in the letters, not even in her final video message." Elon's brows furrowed. What could she have left out? "She told me only when she realized her time was running out," Olivia replied, lifting a small velvet pouch from her bag. "And she made me promise to give this to you in person. Only after you had read the journal, only after you had seen the videos." Elon took the pouch carefully, untied the string, and tilted the contents into his palm. Out fell a small, flat metal object, a USB stick. But unlike the one earlier, which held videos and testimonies, this one was encased in brushed titanium with Clara's initials engraved on one side. Clearly, it had been custom-made, deliberately crafted to last. "She called it her secret code," Olivia said. "She never let me open it. Said it was your eyes only." Elon hesitated for just a moment before rising and walking to the nearby computer. He inserted the drive. A folder popped up. Only one file inside, Clara Final_Suggestion Protocol, ST. He opened it. What appeared was an advanced technical document, painstakingly written. Lines of logic, schematic suggestions, code snippets, optimization strategies. Elon's breath caught as his eyes scanned the content. These weren't just notes. These were architectural blueprints, refinements to one of Tesla's most ambitious and still confidential battery innovations, a project only recently shared with a limited group of senior engineers. "How did she?" he whispered, his voice trailing off. Olivia stepped beside him. "She never stopped learning, Elon. Even after she left janitorial work, she followed your career, your companies, your patents. She didn't need access to inside documents. She watched every press release, studied every design challenge you mentioned in interviews. She reverse-engineered your issues from what little was available. She predicted the exact limitations of the current solid-state battery prototype," Elon said, awe dawning in his eyes, "and proposed workarounds we haven't even tried yet." He scrolled further. "Integrated cooling channels, a novel approach to dendrite suppression, a method to recycle lithium ions using a dual-cell buffer system." It was genius-level insight, decades ahead of its time. He recognized pieces of it as problems he and his team had argued over endlessly. And here, Clara had solved them in silence. "Why didn't she ever send this?" he asked. "Because she didn't want it to be dismissed," Olivia answered softly. "She knew that if she sent it as a retired janitor, no one would take her seriously. Not even you." Elon looked devastated for a moment. She was right, and that's the real tragedy. Magdalena placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Clara said that if you were ready, truly ready, you'd recognize her work for what it was, without anyone needing to explain it." Elon stared at the screen, a storm of emotions moving across his face. Admiration, guilt, inspiration, and something more elusive, humility. "She did it again," he murmured. "She found the flaw no one else could see. From the outside." Olivia nodded, just like she did 25 years ago. A silence settled in the room, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with a reverent kind of wonder, as if Clara herself had entered the room through the brilliance of her mind, now laid bare. Elon saved the file to an encrypted directory. Then he turned to Olivia. "This changes everything," he said. "Not just the project, not just the battery, but how I think about collaboration, about genius. It doesn't always wear a lab coat or have a PhD. Sometimes it pushes a mop and dreams in code at night." Olivia's eyes brimmed with tears. She said that if this made it into your hands, it meant her purpose was fulfilled. She didn't need fame. She just wanted to be part of something that mattered. Elon nodded slowly. She already was, more than she ever knew. And in that moment, surrounded by worn furniture and fading paint, something extraordinary crystallized in Elon's heart. Clara Barrett hadn't just been a hidden genius. She had been the unseen architect of a better future, and he would make sure the world finally saw her for what she truly was. By the time Elon Musk stepped back outside into the early morning sunlight, the world looked different. Not because it had changed, but because he had. Horizon House, with its mismatched chairs, hand-sewn cushions, and laughter echoing through hallways, had left a mark on him, deeper than any investor meeting, rocket launch, or shareholder victory. Clara Barrett, a woman he had never truly seen, had just become one of the most influential figures in his life. And now Elon had a decision to make, one that would echo not only through the lives of those inside this modest building, but across the very fabric of how the world approached education, innovation, and inclusion. He stood at the threshold of the garden, watching as a young boy with noise-canceling headphones calmly worked on a puzzle under a tree, while a teenage girl sketched vivid ideas into a notebook labeled Invention Journal. The energy here was electric, different from the buzz of a high-stakes pitch room, but no less powerful. It was potential in its rawest form. Clara had believed in this potential. Now it was Elon's turn. "I'd like to speak to both of you," Elon said, turning to Magdalena and Olivia, who had been respectfully giving him space. They followed him back into the main gathering room, where sunlight filtered in through windows framed with children's artwork. The air still smelled faintly of cinnamon and books, a strange comfort in a world of sterile offices and silicon. "I've made my decision," he said calmly, but there was a fire behind his eyes. "But it goes beyond saving this building." Magdalena straightened slightly. Olivia blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've seen your methods. I've read Clara's journal, her letters, watched the videos, and even more. Her final file. Clara wasn't just running a learning center, she was building a prototype for what education should be," he said. "What she created here isn't just worth saving." Magdalena gasped softly, her fingers tightening around her cup. "You want to expand Horizon House?" "I want to take Clara's vision global," Elon said, "but not through a top-down corporate model. This needs to stay community-based, rooted in care. We'll create the Clara Barrett Foundation for Educational Innovation, fully funded, independently governed. Horizon House will be the flagship, but we'll replicate the model, adjusting it for other communities around the country and then the world." Olivia's mouth opened, but no words came. Her eyes filled again, not from sadness this time, but overwhelming disbelief. That's what she dreamed of," she whispered. "She just didn't think anyone would believe in it the way she did." "Well, I do," Elon said, "and I have the resources to help make it real." A pause hung in the air before he added, with a note of solemnity, "But there's one condition." Magdalena raised her eyebrows. "Name it." "Clara's name stays front and center. She must be credited, openly, loudly, as the founder and visionary of this movement. The world deserves to know her story, and more importantly, young girls, working mothers, and under-recognized thinkers everywhere deserve to know that brilliance can come from anywhere. That she did this." Olivia's hand went to her heart. "She would have resisted the spotlight," she said, voice trembling, "but she would have wanted the lesson to live on." "Then we do it right," Elon affirmed. He turned, pulling out his phone. "Time to make some waves." The next several hours were a whirlwind. Elon placed call after call, first to Dominic, instructing him to freeze any pending development contracts connected to Raymond Donovan or Venture Start Partners. Then to Tesla's legal team, assigning them to perform a full acquisition of the Horizon House property, quietly but effectively, under a newly formed shell company. The building would no longer be vulnerable to eviction, no matter what Donovan's intentions had been. Finally, he spoke to his media team. "I want a press conference organized, here at Horizon House, tomorrow. It's time the world hears about Clara Barrett." By the afternoon, the plan was in motion. Elon sat in Clara's old reading nook, now one of his favorite spots, watching children drift in and out of activities. And when he looked up and caught a glimpse of Clara's photo hanging near the front entrance, a candid one, smiling as she watched children play in the garden, he smiled back, as if silently thanking her. For the first time in a long while, Elon Musk wasn't the center of the story. And that's exactly how it needed to be. 1 week later, Horizon House stood bathed in morning sunlight, transformed yet still deeply familiar. The worn exterior remained untouched by design. Elon had insisted that the building retain its unassuming presence. Let the magic surprise them from the inside, he had said. But inside, the change was unmistakable. Upgraded equipment had arrived, including new computers, specialized software for neurodiverse learners, and modular furniture tailored to accommodate sensory needs. Fresh coats of paint brightened the rooms in calming pastels, and every hallway had been lined with portraits of alumni, their stories printed beneath in bold letters. At the entrance now hung a polished brass plaque that read, "The Clara Barrett Foundation for Educational Innovation," in honor of the invisible mind that changed everything. Today, Horizon House was hosting its first major event under the new foundation. Families, educators, journalists, and community leaders gathered in the small courtyard garden for a press conference Elon had personally organized. Olivia stood near the entrance, adjusting a string of lights for the mid-morning celebration. She wore a soft blue dress, the same one Clara had worn in her last community awards photo. Magdalena, dressed in her finest shawl, stood beside her, sipping tea and quietly scanning the crowd. Elon arrived without fanfare. No security entourage, no tailored suit. Just a simple blazer and his familiar, thoughtful expression. He greeted the volunteers one by one, shook hands with parents, and knelt to speak with a young boy who proudly showed off a clay rocket he'd made for Mr. Musk. At precisely 10 a.m., Elon stepped onto the small wooden platform beneath the garden's oldest tree. Dozens of camera lenses turned to him. The crowd hushed. What they expected was a tech magnate making a charitable donation. What they received was something very different. "I'm not here today to talk about rockets or AI," Elon began. "I'm here because of a woman who was never supposed to be remembered, who asked for no credit, who built something extraordinary while the world wasn't watching." He paused, his gaze scanning the crowd. Her name was Clara Barrett. From the back, a few heads turned toward the brass plaque. Cameras zoomed in. Elon continued, voice steady but heavy with meaning. 25 years ago, Clara was a janitor at my first startup. I didn't know her name. I didn't even know her face. But I remember the notes, anonymous suggestions from cleaning staff that solved real problems when no one else could. Murmurs rose among the journalists. Elon smiled faintly. She was watching, listening. More than that, she was contributing. Quietly, brilliantly, and with her meager savings, she invested in our company. Not for personal gain, but because she believed in the vision. And when that investment paid off, she didn't spend it on herself. Elon stepped aside and gestured to the children seated near the front. Children reading aloud from books, demonstrating robots, or painting vibrant murals behind him. She built this, Horizon House, a sanctuary for children who think differently, who don't fit neatly into the world's expectations. The crowd was silent now, enraptured. Clara used her gains to fund this place for 15 years. She passed away recently, asking for nothing, only that I learn the truth, and I did. I read her journal, her letters, her notes. I saw what she saw. He turned to Olivia and Magdalena. That's why today, I am officially announcing the Clara Barrett Foundation for Educational Innovation. Horizon House will remain its heart, but we will expand Clara's model to cities across the country. With Clara's documented methods and with guidance from Magdalena and Olivia, we will bring this kind of education to every child who's ever been told they don't belong. Thunderous applause erupted. Olivia wiped tears from her cheeks. Magdalena folded her hands, whispering, "She would be so proud." Elon raised his hand for silence, then said, "But that's not all. There's one more story I must tell. The crowd leaned in. Years ago, when I was at my lowest point as an entrepreneur, on the verge of giving up, I received a letter, anonymous. It said, "Don't walk away. The world needs people who think like you do, even if they don't know it yet." I kept that letter for 25 years, never knowing who wrote it. He pulled a worn piece of paper from his pocket and held it up. It was Clara. The garden fell utterly still. She saved this place, but long before that she saved me. And today, we honor her not just by remembering her name, but by building the future she quietly imagined. He stepped back, and the wind chime Clara had once hung in the garden rang gently in the breeze. A new chapter had begun. A ripple Clara never expected to be felt had become a tidal wave of change, and it was only just getting started. In a world obsessed with recognition and spotlight, Clara Barrett's story reminds us that the most powerful legacies often begin in silence. Her quiet brilliance, her belief in possibility, and her determination to invest in a future she might never see changed not only Elon Musk's trajectory, but the lives of hundreds of children. In today's fast-paced world, this inspiring story teaches us that real impact doesn't always come from wealth or fame, but from believing in people, nurturing untapped potential, and standing up for what matters. If Clara's legacy moved you as much as it did Elon, help her story continue to ripple outward. Like this video to honor her memory, subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and share it with someone who believes in second chances, quiet heroes, and the unseen forces that shape our world. Thank you for watching, and remembering, the woman who changed everything.